Throughout the year, I never had an answer for a question: can museums exhibit controversial issues? Its reputation as an objective educational institution seems to limit what the museums can exhibit. However, as the world becomes pluralized and fast-paced, exhibiting past, outdated artifacts seems inadequate to portray all the events occurring around the world. Then, what is the origin of controversial exhibitions and its bottom line? Museum staff can choose to consciously create controversy in the interest of fueling important discussion or bringing light to the ideas that cause visitors to closely examine their perspectives on important issues. However, if audience reception or the social, political, and economic context is not carefully considered when addressing controversial topics, the aim of the exhibit can backfire quickly. Controversial exhibitions include both huge exhibitions and individual artwork displays. David Stern's Shark, a riff on Damon Hirst's The Physical Impossibility of Death in the Mind of Someone Living, shows a mostly naked and bound Saddam Hussein suspended in liquid. The work was already banned once by Belgian town of Bidalkirky for the fear of upsetting Muslims, and continues to draw ire from entranced visitors. The artist Guillermo Vargas tied an emaciated dog to a wall in the Codes Gallery in Nicaragua. On the wall behind the dog were the words, "You are what you read," spelled out with dog food. It was reported that the dog died after the exhibition as a result of starvation. The artist argued that no one who saw the piece intervened by feeding the dog. Igniting a fire about censorship practices online, The Untouchables by Eric Rivaldo dealt with how children are exploited in different ways throughout the world. "The children are crucified," he wrote about the project earlier that year. "In a sense, to each of their representative villains, their faces blurred, indicating a loss of identity." Facebook deemed the material too shocking and removed it from the website. The artist Andres Serrano received death threats and hate mail for years following the unveiling of his photograph Peace Christ. It was a photograph of a small plastic crucifix submerged in a jar of Serrano's urine. When the piece was shown in 2011, it was vandalized beyond repair by a group of Christian fundamentalists armed with hammers. A young artist named Scott Tyler created a whirlwind of controversy with his piece, "What is the Proper Way to Display a Flag?" The piece was criticized when it debuted at the Art Institute of Chicago for being disrespectful to the flag. Thousands of people protested, and the Art Institute's funding was cut dramatically the following year. President Bush even made comment on the piece, calling it disgraceful. The entire U.S. Congress denounced the artwork as well, moving to pass further legislation to protect the flag. Colonial Williamsburg is an example of a slave auction. Before the 1980s, there was no representation of slave life in this museum. When this show was first introduced to the museum, many people found it offensive because it brought the past too close to the present. There was much debate, and the whole controversy brought the issues back to the present. Chris Ofili's The Holy Virgin Mary received little to no fanfare until it landed in New York in 1999 when the show came to the Brooklyn Museum. The large painting depicts a Black Madonna rendered in resin-covered elephant feces and surrounded by collages of pornographic images. Now, other than independent artworks, there are many exhibitions that cause controversy for its gravity of the subject. Apart from the education role, does museum has an obligation to exhibit socially controversial issues? In 1969, Harlem on My Mind at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Newark, was the first concerted effort by a major art museum to address contemporary social concerns. It was criticized as a view of outsiders for implying that there is homogeneity within the black community and for its failure to adequately represent the relationship between black and whites. In 1985, the exhibit called Endings, an exhibit about deaths and loss, at the Boston Children's Museum stimulated public discussion of the appropriateness of an exhibit on death, particularly for a young audience. In late 1990s, in the Berlin Human Museum, more than 20 bodies and many body parts were displayed. Despite its goal to promote scientific inquiry, many interested groups, especially Christian groups, fiercely protested against the opening of the museum. Therefore, these museums and exhibitions clearly show us that whatever the museum is and how good the motivations are, there are always political questions that bars exhibitions. Before discussing the museum's role in civil society, the findings of a report into public attitudes to museums by Museum Association in 2013 found that there was a high level of trust in museums and a perception that museums have a role to play in society. However, the findings have sparked debate in the sector about whether museums should promote social justice issues. The Missouri History Museum seeks to deepen the understanding of past choices, present circumstances, and future possibilities, strengthen the bonds of the community, and facilitate solutions to common problems. The museum prioritizes civic society, individuals, and their lives. Then, if the museum focuses on the lives of people, how will they portray Ferguson issue, a racially divided issue that still resonates among people? So, what is the red line for museums? What issues can be displayed and what cannot? For museums like Civil Rights Museum, for example, only politically neutralized objects could be delayed. However, how about Missouri History Museum? To answer these unsolved museum questions, I interviewed Gwen Moore, a creator of landscape and community identity in Missouri History Museum. Her experience in civil rights exhibitions and many political exhibitions shed light on these questions we had throughout the semester.
Individuals make history. Well, we know events make history and circumstances, but it's how individuals react to those circumstances and react to those events that really tells the real story.
As you can see, the museum offers genealogy and history search for citizens online.
Well, I consider myself very socially conscious, very racially conscious. Well, they should not do politically neutral. That makes no sense. I mean, or politically compromised. I think you should present the truth. And if the truth is difficult, then it's difficult. If the truth offends, it offends. But you gotta tell the truth. History of this region. Sometimes the history is a nice, pleasant history. A lot of times it's not, especially when it comes to race and race relations. We have a very troubled past here. And if we tell the history of those relationships, it's going to be uncomfortable for some people. It's definitely a story of people. And it's Mike Brown's story, it's Darren Wilson's story, it's the people of Ferguson's story. First of all, we did have a town hall right after the Ferguson eruption. Okay. We had a town hall meeting. We had people come here and discuss the issues that were involved. I think we had a standing room only crowd. When Governor Nixon announced the formation of the Ferguson Commission, he did it here at the History Museum. And we've also been host to some Ferguson Commission hearings. We've had numerous programs focused on Ferguson. I don't see how it would. I think it would enhance. Wouldn't you? I mean, that's our job and our role. And education is about informing people. And like I said, it's about telling the truth, telling what happened. Expect the truth. I think people would be disappointed if they came to an exhibit and it was all about, bunny rabbits and smiling, bouncing babies and butterflies. And what the heck is this? What's the real story? I think people want the real story. You judge your success by how many people come through the door.
You mean for creators?
For museums.
Oh, okay.
It's all about numbers. I think they're going to have to deal with contemporary issues as well as issues of the past and make that link. I think they cannot shy away from difficult issues because I think the public is more savvy and they expect something different. I think that you cannot always deal with the laudatory and the celebratory. You can deal with that, but you also have to deal with those other issues as well, the more difficult issues. You have to present the truth, even if the truth is not always pleasant.
Therefore, Gwen encouraged museums to seek truth, regardless of its controversy. It is not an option, but an obligation to the society that museums contribute to the discussion by demonstrating often uncompromisable, emotionally sensitive issues. And what we need is stories. Stories behind people and artifacts. Maybe we are too entrapped into the thought of neutrality of the museum. I believe the museums not only preserve what happened in the past, but also maintain the trait of the past. We should not be memorizing events and judging upon the past civil rights movements. What we should do is realize that civil rights and other many issues are still an ongoing problem that we should act on it, and I believe that is the heart of the Missouri History Museum.